My name is Dominic Duval. I'm a bass player. A lot of people might know me from the records I've done for Cadence and CIMP, as well as quite a few other European labels. I'm originally known to be someone who works in the avant-garde world, but I also do many different types of music. My tastes are varied, they're eclectic, and as eclectic as I am. Yes, I'm here to speak about my experience with Charles Mingus, which was a short period of time. I was working in New York City. I had just gotten out of the service, and this is in the '60s. And I decided that one of the things that I needed to do was to investigate some of Charlie Mingus's work, and of course there were the many recordings that he had been involved in, including some of my favorite ones with Max Roach and Bud Powell, but mostly about his work in ensembles, the way he constructed music through the bass, and how he managed to lead a band from behind an instrument that doesn't necessarily make it an easy thing to do. Bass is, of course, a very low-pitched instrument with not much projection, and when you have 5 or 6 or 10 pieces playing at the same time, a lot of your thoughts and desires go unheard because of the sonic discrepancy of the instrument. Well, Charlie Mingus was scheduled to do a date at the old Two Saints, I believe it was, or it was on St. Mark's Place. I remember it might have been the Half Note at the time, and he was there for a week. And I had spoke to my girlfriend at the time, and I decided that I would take her one night. Well, we walked in there at the beginning of the session, and there was hardly anybody in the place. There was a bartender, there was a few customers sitting at the bar talking, and Charlie Mingus was set up on the bandstand, and there were a number of people sitting down. I think his girlfriend at the time was this blonde lady that he finally married, and well, we had a couple of beers and we're sitting there watching him, and I was totally blown away by his power as a bass player. First off, his attack, the way he maneuvers through changes, how he develops a rapport with the band, and how he would stop every once in a while to tell people, give them information about how he wanted his pieces played, what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. You always knew who his favorite people were because he never really discussed anything with them. He only discussed it with people that he wasn't that friendly with. And there were a few of them in the band, and then they were always getting chastised about one thing or another thing. And Charlie was a tough man. The way he pronounced things and the way he said things, it was pretty much like he was pounding on the table all the time, saying, "I want this done this way, now." And of course, these guys are trying to do this. Poor Jimmy Nepper playing the trombone. He's trying to get this stuff across, and he said, "You're playing that sloppy ass shit, man." And that's the way he would go about. He would go about instructing people. "You can't play that bullshit behind me, man." And he had that going. So the first night I was interested in his attack, but I decided I was going to go back the second night. And I did, and there was a lot more conclusive at that time. I saw that the pieces had come together after their first rehearsal, I imagine, which was the night before. This next night was smoother. He played through a number of Charlie Mingus's known compositions, and everybody was soloing. And I just stood there and watched him, and the way he moved through with the instrument, like he was like one with the thing, and the sound he was getting was incredible on an old bass without an amplifier, gut strings, just pushing the hell out of this band, and some heavy-duty players too. Charles Mingus, I forget who was on piano. It might have been Don Pullen. It might have been somebody else, but I know Danny Richmond was on drums, and Jimmy Nepper was on trombone. I decide I'm going back one more night. I was going to start to write down stuff that I had seen him do and kind of steal some of his licks. He had some favorite licks that he would play. And I'm sitting there, and he looks at me. This is like halfway through the session, I guess, the first hour I'm there. He says, "What are you doing here, kid?" And I look at him and I say, "Well, be honest, Mr. Mingus, I'm here to try to learn from you." And he says, "You trying to rip off my shit?" I said, I don't know what to say. 21 years old, this guy, one of my heroes, is asking me, am I trying to rip him off, right? I said, I'm just trying to learn from you. But really what I wanted to say, and what I had wound up saying, is said, "You're ripping off my stuff, right?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Tell you what," he says, "why don't you play something for me? We're going to take a break. You play something for me. You're a bass player." He said, "You play something for me." And I said, "I can't." He said, "No, you just play something for me. Play a walking bass line." So I got up there and I pick up his instrument and I play for about 2 minutes. And he looks at me and I saw him a scowling kind of look, and then he started looking. He said, "Kid," he says, "you're pretty good." He says, "I could really make a great bass player out of you. Why don't you take lessons with me?" And I said, "No, I really can't. I don't have the money. I'm getting ready to go back I'm here at 21 years old. I think I was on leave. I'm going back on tour." I said, "The armed forces." I says, "I can't." He said, "Well, when you get out," he says, "you come and look me up." And I always remember that, thinking that what I learned from him in those 3 days has gotten me to where I am today, as far as being able to, as a bass player, to be able to be more of a leader. And being a bass player and being a leader, I think the most I got was just watching Mingus and how he pushed his sound out and how he got people to move the way he wanted them to move without saying a word. And so that's my Charlie Mingus story. And I really enjoyed my time watching him and learning from him, the master that he was.